What's up, Vibers? It's been exactly 1 week since the launch of 1.0, and we just got hit with our very first, they're calling it a hotfix, but it's pretty much a patch from Theorycraft. And those of us that have been around a while know that TC always is listening to player feedback, but here, reacting within a week's time to community feedback really over the weekend, bringing in some massive changes purely based around the player feedback since 1.0 launched a short week ago. These changes directly address some of the most critical issues that players have noted about the 1.0 build, including changes to the Armory, Prisma, Wukong, and more. So without further ado, let's dive in. July 30 hotfix patch notes, more Prisma, cheaper forge options, changes to Vault Loot, and Wukong nerfs. So we're going to check out the summary here, and then we'll read through the dev blog a little more in detail, but this first part will give us a good idea really of what's going on. So taking a look at this graphic here, we can see for the Armory concerns, more Prisma rewards, reduced forge crafting costs across the board, everything being available for 1,000 now, bad luck capsule protection to guarantee legendaries, and more equipment drops in the world on the map that you can find in-game if you don't have your Armory built out yet. And if we scroll down a little bit, we see some balance changes hitting our worst offenders as far as feeling oppressive to play against, and that would be Brawl, Wukong, Jin, the true melee hunters, along with Shiv, the melee ranged hunter. All right, so daily mission Prisma gains increase. The Armory has been rewarding highly engaged players, but we want to make sure casual players also feel meaningful daily progress. Daily missions are designed to be quick, achievable goals that give everyone, no matter how much time they have, a steady growth in their Armory. To better support this, we're significantly boosting the Prisma gems awarded from these daily missions. This ensures that even if you only have time for a few matches, you'll walk away with real progress toward your collection. So these changes include the amount of Prisma you get from the daily missions changing from 100 to 400, so 400% increase there. And if you complete all the missions on any given day, you are still going to get this meta mission reward of a free capsule. So now looking at Prisma in-game, says over the last few days, we've heard feedback about gem gains for non-first placements not feeling great. On the flip side, first place finishes are yielding too many gems. We're raising the floor of Prisma gains for everyone in the game, benefiting those in the middle or lower placements more. So what this looks like in numbers is gems lost on death. So when you die, you're going to drop 33% of your Prisma instead of half. So you'll still be holding on to 2/3 instead of just half of your Prisma every time you go down. There's just a significant overall increase right here in the middle to Prisma you can gain in the match as a whole. So we can see gameplay actions increase by roughly 20% overall across the board, including all these things. So this includes PvP execution bonus getting boosted another 5 from 20 to 25. Minimum Prisma gain from killing an enemy almost doubled from 8 to 15. And minion and boss drop increased across the board. So soul bosses from 50 to 60, final bosses from 80 to 100. So huge Prisma gains coming out of bosses as well. And then here at the bottom, we see the change to the Prisma multiplier based on your placement at the end of the game. So if we take a look at this, they're saying first place was reduced and the middle of the pack was brought up a little more. So this is a multiplier on the Prisma you have in your possession when the game ends. So before this patch, if you got first place, all the Prisma you were holding, you kept all that and you got an extra 75% on top of that, right? Second place, you got a 60% multiplier on everything you had. Third place, you got 45% multiplier. Fourth was 30%. Fifth was 15%. And then sixth and lower, you can see here, just basically left the game with the Prisma they had. There's no extra additional multiplier here. And that sort of remains true for the bottom half of the lobby here. We see the bottom 6 still remaining ones. However, the 6th place spot is now included in the multiplier. We can see jumping from 1 to 1.1. So you'll get a little multiplier if you're in 6th. We can see 5th jumping by 5% up to 20% increase instead of 15, right? We can see 4th remains the same at 1.3 because remember, they're bringing the top end down and they're boosting the middle. And so we can see like some of these numbers just got kind of dragged to the middle here. So the mid ground is 4th place, which is staying the same at 1.3, right? And now we're going to start going down where 3rd place is going to get a little less of a multiplier. 2nd place is going to get a little less of a multiplier, and 1st place is going to get a less of a multiplier. And this is basically trying to more evenly distribute the total Prisma and kind of the reward multipliers across the lobby instead of it being so focused on first. Now coming down to actually finding gear on the map, which is going to be focused around vaults. So vaults are intended to be a reliable source of equipment for players that want an alternate source, whether because they're still developing their Armory or because they're behind on gold. Up until now, vaults were dropping equipment rarely, about 3% chance per item. This was too low for them to achieve the intent, and many players weren't even aware that they could contain equipment, especially higher star gear. So vaults now have at least one piece of equipment each. So instead of only finding perks in a vault, you're always going to find at least one piece of gear here. And then the stars of the gear you're actually going to find on that vault is relative to the armory progression of the lobby you're in. So they're using some kind of number to kind of gauge each player's unlock in the armory, right? And based on where that number is for that current game will determine what star gear any player could find potentially in a vault. So essentially, the more players that have 2-star or 3-star equipment in their armory in any given game will increase the odds that random 2-star or 3-star relics and grips will be available in the vaults. So essentially, the more upgraded the players you're playing against, the higher chance you are going to find upgraded gear on the map. Pretty cool. Coming down to bad luck protection, this one's really cool, and I think this helps alleviate at least maybe a little bit of the pain points of a gacha system. I know there's like a whole fundamental discussion on that. That's sort of a separate point here, but Theorycraft is obviously paying attention because things like this can really help kind of lessen the frustration of this kind of system. And we see that right here. Capsule rolls feel frustrating when streaks of bad luck keep you from ever seeing a legendary. While the rarity of legendaries is part of what makes them exciting, we don't want long dry spells to feel punishing or unfair. To address this, we're adding a bad luck protection system for capsules. If you haven't seen a legendary relic or perk in a certain number of rolls, your next roll is guaranteed to be legendary. Once you get a legendary, the counter resets. Who knows exactly what this number of roll is, but now you should at least be able to for sure get a legendary after a certain number of rolls. And on that same line of thought, kind of lessening the pain points of an RNG system, we have these updates to the rotating forge. And these are basically the stuff that shows up, you know, in the shop under the daily specials or the weekly specials with the timer, where, you know, every day it resets to a new 3 things. And then same thing with the weekly things, every week those reset. So it says the Armory Forge is meant to give you direct control over building your collection, a place where you can pick up specific items you want rather than relying on capsules. Up until now, Forge prices were tuned high enough that capsules were almost always the efficient path, with the Forge acting more like a luxury option. We've adjusted the system to make the Forge a clearer and more rewarding choice when you see something you want. So I really like this. Forge item prices are now 1,000 Prisma across all rarities. So there's actually not even a difference between buying a legendary relic now and buying green grips. They are all going to be 1,000 Prisma. Something else you should just keep in mind that most people don't think about is the rarity. All the grips are green, right? So the rarities don't necessarily tell you that they're better or worse. Like there are no rare or legendary grips. So if you get a green grip that you need, that's the best grip you can get. You don't need a gold grip. You know, so it's a little misleading and you're like, oh, I got another green. But if it's a grip, that's the best you can get. So, and like it's a similar thing with perks, right? Where there are specific perks that are green, that are bis for certain builds or certain hunters over the rare, over even some of the legendary ones, depending on the hunter you're playing. So anyways, I just like my friends were like rolling and like getting grips and being disappointed because they're green. And I'm like, guys, there's no colors above green in grips. That's the best you can get. That's good. Like it's not bad. It's good. All right, so looking at the details here, Forge item prices are now 1,000 Prisma across all rarities. So legendaries down from 8,000, epics down from 4,000, and rare down from 2,500. Each item can only be purchased once per rotation. So this is a change. I think the weeklies could be purchased 3 times, and I'm not sure if the dailies were the same. I had only actually bought one out of there. It was the weekly air blast that I had last week. It also says daily relic slots can now roll all blue and purple relics, where I guess there was some kind of limiter on that before. And it says weekly relic slots increase from 3 to 4. So you're actually going to have an extra option on your weekly rolls for things to buy directly out of the armory. So again, they're not just going to instantly remove the system they've been working months to implement, right? But they are very much listening to player feedback and trying to lessen the pain points of that system. There's some little changes here to weekly chest updates where it says the capsule granted from the weekly bounty can now contain relics and grips. I'm not sure if it couldn't before. And then it says the select one chest reward, which I think is from like the big weekly chest that you open at the end of the week based off your best Prisma games, can still contain all item types. Huge W here, gang. Let's go. So you now receive Prisma for arena matches. I freaking love this because arena is an equally cool part of the game. Really good if you just want to practice kind of your mechanics and an isolated 4v4 fight. None of the kind of chaos of BR to interrupt. It's much more of a sort of mechanical duel of skill. And I know a good chunk of players that are basically only arena players. They just love playing arena. They're not a huge fan of the chaos of BR, but they love the SUPERVIVE combat. If that's where you're kind of falling in, I think you'll really enjoy some arena matches, just casual 4v4, really fun. No rank or anything, but now you are going to be able to earn Prisma for it. So you are actually going to be able to make progress on your armory just by grinding arena. We can see it's going to be 16 Prisma for a round win, 4 Prisma for a round loss. So even if you get turbo stomped, go 0-5, you are coming out with 20 Prisma. Keep in mind that's sometimes more than a low BR placement game. If you win, you'll also earn a 50% multiplier. And so let's say you win every round, you'll be at what? So if you 5-0, it's 80 Prisma straight up and then a 50% multiplier on it. So 10% of 80 is 8, right? So 50% would be 5 of those. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 plus 80 is 120. So a perfect 5-0 in arena will net you 120 Prisma. Pretty dang good for how fast a 5-0 can go. And let's say you have a knockout, drag out game where you go 5 wins, 4 losses. You know, you're still getting 4 Prism for the round loss. You're actually coming out with, 16 times 5, you're 80 plus another, 4 times 4, another 16. And then important to note, you do not drop any of this Prisma on death. It doesn't have the same behavior as in the BR. All right, now kind of getting into the bottom half of things with the hunter balance that was mentioned at the beginning. We see some significant hits here to the sort of worst offenders in the meta since the 1.0 launch. And most of these are true melee hunters. This is Brawl, Jhin, Wukong, and we throw Shiv in there because of how much she sort of benefited from this transition over into the armory. So we can see these first 2 changes have already been implemented over the weekend through hotfixes, right? So we saw Shiv's LMB and Malice damage reduced by 10%, I think yesterday or the day before. And then we saw Brawl's LMB damage reduced by 15% like the day or 2 before that. So these changes were implemented immediately to try to, like, as soon as they were sort of aware that these were kind of overtuned, they tried to pull these back as soon as possible. This is a big one for Shiv. A lot of Shivs have been running Burning Palm. I've been talking a lot with Aiden about Shiv builds. Potentially an Aiden Shiv build in the works might be finding its way to this channel. But with the empowered auto attack from the shift no longer counting as an ability, this is no longer going to be proccing Burning Palm and Frozen Palm. So the kind of slow as well as the burn that Shiv could get off of just her auto attack instead of an ability, because shifting turns her auto attack into an ability, is no longer going to work in the armory system. We can see several nerfs to Wukong here. Wukong's held LMB impulse now decays with repeated use after a short period of time. And this is pretty interesting because they only call out held LMB impulse. And if you've been following players like Kenneth, who've kind of been on the bleeding edge of uncovering Wukong tech, the true fastest pod racing actually includes an LMB tap as well. Only the first part is the hold. So I'm actually curious if this is even going to slow Kenneth down because of the way he's only holding LMB. Like, I wonder how long this decays for. Lasts for, because he's holding LMB, then he's gliding, then he's tapping LMB, and then he's gliding. So if the tap impulse doesn't decay and doing the tap in between the held gives it times to reset, we're gonna have to see how much this actually affects the pod racing. And hella spoilers here, but we also maybe have some really cool Wukong tech hitting the channel from Kenneth as well. And so might have to get an update from him on this before we release that. We see Wukong is now yaw slowed during his R&B. So this is going to be a huge one. I called out in my Wukong guide, and Kenneth called out when I was working with him the other day, how powerful the ability to flick the hitbox of the R&B is, where you can essentially look the opposite direction of where you're trying to slam at the very last minute, spin it around, and that player has literally no time to react to that hitbox because they can't even see it coming. It's facing this way, it's off their screen, and as soon as you're on their screen, you flip it around and just insta-stun them before they have a chance to react. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. So what yaw slowed means, so it's not yaw locked. Yaw locked would mean you can't turn at all. Yaw is basically how fast, like once I, come up with my staff, how fast can I flick? Right now, there's no yaw slow at all, right? So I can literally do a 1080 slam with my staff. With a yaw slow, it's gonna behave more like Ghost Laser, more like Zeph ult, where you cast it and you can't spin it. Like once it's kind of started the cast animation, there is a limited degree to how far you can pull it, right? So like Ghost Laser is a good example where you can like swing it about 90 degrees after you start the cast. You can't actually get it any further than that than if you're trying to flick it. And same exact thing with Zeph ult, right? Where if you start the cast, you can only pull it, close to like 90 degrees in either direction if you're trying to kind of change the trajectory of it. So now Wukong's R&B, his big staff slam, is going to work in the same way where he's not going to be able to insta swing it. It's going to be some kind of slow. So if he's wanting to, kind of juke the hitbox, he's going to have to start it at least like a little bit to the left. He's not going to be able to face it completely the other way. Maybe he can start at like 45 degrees to the right. And just the same way you still swing the Ghost Laser, you just swing the hitbox, you know, and it takes a little longer to happen. But this would gives at least the other player time to react, right? Because where you run into problems with games like this is when there's no chance for outplay, like literally zero. And with something like this, with Wukong's kit, he can literally hit you with a slam without you ever seeing him or his hitbox from off screen. So with this, you're actually going to have some measure of outplay as an enemy player, seeing at least some kind of hitbox entering your screen with some minuscule amount of time to react. Final change to Wukong here, we see clones have diminishing returns on their damage when hitting the same target with R&B. So we are no longer going to have this crazy just one shot, one tap clap, where with Wukong, once you ult, all your clones do the same first ability you do. So if you ult, rise up on your staff, you can actually slam all 6 sweet spots in the same exact spot on the same person. And like Kenneth has some clips where he's just like literally one-shotting people, just insta-deleting them with 6 staff sweet spots from him and the clones. So this is going to make it so the damage on that's going to DR. So I think this is essentially removing that like 6-way one shot where he's still going to do good damage. He's still going to stun you, but it's not going to just insta one tap you from 100 to 0 with no chance. Right. And along the same lines of thought, we see another touch to Jin's movement here with Jin's LMB impulse now decaying with repeated use after a short time as well. So Jin has always been the master of the LMB impulse. They tried to implement a change doing glider lock with the shift a few months ago that didn't end up working out for anyone. They ended up reverting that as a whole. It just felt really bad mechanically. And this LMB movement has always been a huge part of Jin's kit. Now he's going to have to think a little bit more about how he uses it because he's not going to be able to use it infinitely. Essentially, as you use it, the impulse is going to decay and you're going to have to find windows to stop doing it for a sec to reset. So still going to be able to use the impulse for things like, you know, dodging the slam after a KP hook, just dodging projectiles in combat, staying horizontal across abyss. However, he's no longer going to be able to do it infinitely where he can just always be LMB schmoving and go faster than another hunter without ever even using a dash. All right, so that's the hunter balance. Seems like a pretty fair assessment. I expect to see more brawl changes because he's still felt extremely strong even after this LB reduction went through. And I feel like the same thing with Shiv, right? Where I don't really, and Aiden said the same thing. He said, early game, you feel the 10% a little bit, but late game, this hasn't slowed Shiv damage down at all. And we're really going to have to see what these end up looking like. If you're looking for a good resource of someone that is going to be testing this stuff and trying to understand how this has affected Wukong, highly recommend checking out Mellow Kenneth on Twitch. He has been nonstop training Wukong, and I guarantee you he is going to be out there today messing with these changes, trying to figure out how much it has affected them. And I would say same thing with Aiden on Shiv. Aiden_BY on Twitch if you're looking to understand these Shiv changes more. Great resource for Brawl, top ranked Brawl in the game throughout all of open beta would be Height. He changed his Twitch to Height_SV. So if you're looking for a really good Brawl to follow. And as far as streamers go, I think Illusion is a really high skill, probably one of the highest skilled Jins in the game. He's actually insane. And so he's probably going to be sort of figuring out how to deal with this LMB impulse decrease. That's Illusion SV at Twitch. All right, now coming down to the final notes here, we see some changes to macro. It says we now differentiate Heart and Kobayashi Everbeacon timings. These are now increased from 6 to 10 seconds, and these are already interruptible, so engagements in the area should feel slightly more controlled instead of this crazy respawn fiesta that's happening. Final Circle search radius expanded by 20% to get more play in more biomes. And I actually heard it might still be in the works, but there is a very complicated bug in play that's causing the initial outer circle to be narrower than intended, where we're seeing things like stacks like Academy and different biomes almost being perma out of the map of play because the initial circle starts like halfway through Academy. And that's something to do with the actual like expansion of the map and the terrain changes. So that one has been bothering me. I expect that to get figured out fairly soon, but it is apparently very, very complicated and they're still trying to nail it down. Taking a look at some of the bug fixes they have hit and noted here in this hotfix, the ultimate diadem, the relic that procs after you use your ultimate, has a now 0.05 second internal cooldown to prevent multi-hits. We see fixed an issue where players could be invisible during warm-up. This was actually super annoying. Really glad that one is out. And fixed an issue where tapping Myth LMB locked the player out of casting for longer than intended. Even though Myth, one of my OG hunter goats, I absolutely love her and I love bows. I haven't gotten to play her in 1.0 yet, but I did hear some things about her feeling kind of wonky. So I think this being one of the things that was making her feel bad. There's apparently another thing feeling bad where there's a bug that when you hit the sweet spot of your fully empowered shot, your next fully empowered shot sweet spot timing is different. So you can't actually shoot in cadence. There's some kind of weird bug with the LMB timing. So keep an eye for that getting fixed as well. If Myth is feeling weird to you right now, it's probably some combination of this bug and that bug. So, you know, if you're getting frustrated with it, I would honestly recommend just like trying another hunter for a bit until they fix those bow issues. This one might help, and that one might have got fixed under the hood, so definitely give her a try after this patch. But if you're feeling like the timing on your shots is weird, it's because they're actually slightly off every time you hit a shot. It's really weird one. It's a strange one. But as a fellow Myth player, if you like Myth, you'll also really like Ghost. You'll also probably really like Carbine. They have similar kind of like ranged carry feels, just like different styles. Boom. And that is it for the kind of bulk of the changes here. And then there's also this really cool dev blog that I am actually not going to go through here because we're already kind of long on this video, but I highly recommend checking it out. I'll link both of these in the description if you're looking to kind of read through this stuff yourself. But we can see they just go into like a little more detail about the changes we just talked about and kind of the sort of logic behind the changes, like a little more into the, you know, minds of TC and why they're doing some of the stuff they're doing. So if you're looking to find out, you know, kind of a little more around the mindset of these changes, I think this post would be, you know, a nice little nighttime reading for you. Oh, and we get a teaser at the bottom here. Hold up. Let's just read this balance section as we close out here. The biggest balance area we're keeping an eye on right now is characters with dunking abilities. With the updated glider and map layout, several of our resident dunkers are starting to feel more oppressive, especially in Heavy Abyss endgames. We're exploring some wider changes that include making dunks feel a little less binary and addressing unintended glider momentum optimization slightly, which we plan to ship in a later patch. We're also keeping an eye on individual hunter win rates across different MMRs to see how everyone's adjusting to their best 1.0 selves. We only have a few days of data to work with, which, by the way, guys, they had no external data to balance this. All the numbers changed, the whole sort of stat system changed, all the items got reworked. So the fact that it's released in a somewhat balanced state is kind of a miracle. And we can see already like very swift action from TC trying to bring things back in line here. But there are some outliers that we're looking to fix before resuming our bi-weekly balance cadence. Brawl and Shiv received some nerfs earlier over the weekend, and we're making some additional adjustments to Wukong and Jin's movement so their LMBs don't make them quite so slippery. And this right here, guys, is big true. Like, I have been playtesting this game, I think, over 5 years now, and I have never seen a development company for a game be more involved with their players since the literal first day of inception of the game all the way to the 1.0 launch. There has never been a time where Theorycraft has not been intimately listening to player feedback and actively using that to make adjustments to their game to make it better. And so throughout SUPERVIVE's alpha and beta, we've always valued player feedback as one of the main inputs for us to make the game better. That's not changing now that we are in 1.0. So very much expect big changes still to be occurring to the game over the lifetime of the game, not just now, not just in the first few weeks from 1.0. This game will be continually evolving, I expect, for the lifespan of the game, because that is just the type of developers that Theorycraft are. They're trying to make a 10,000 hour game. They want to make the best PvP game on the planet. The goals they have, massive, like huge kind of stretch goals. So if you're frustrated with some things right now, instead of just giving up on the game and thinking that it's never going to change, that's just not the reality we live in. The game is going to change. Theorycraft is listening to your feedback. So really make sure, you join the Discord and you are getting involved in leaving that feedback, because TC really does parse through all that and they're using all of it to make the game better for all of us. So finishing off, it says, we'll be back next week with our first real patch. Like this is a big hotfix, right? Basically a real patch, along with a rocking new hunter. Oh, I see what they did there. See you there. This is like Earthbender Mage, like Talia avatar chick. She's going to be cool. Hell yeah. So that's that one. So if you want to check out the rest of the devlog, we just kind of touched on the bottom there, but a lot of this stuff we covered the details of in the previous post. Is just a little more intel into the minds of Theorycraft. And boom. So that is all we got for this one. I am very pleasantly surprised and excited at the swift movement coming from Theorycraft, implementing changes just literally exactly 1 week after release, coming through with some big overall changes to their premier new system, as well as to the most oppressive hunters in the game, hopefully making the game significantly more enjoyable for everyone that has had those pain points in the last week, and everyone can have just a better overall time vibing in SUPERVIVE. Like I said, don't expect this to slow down though. We should be expecting another real full patch next week on next Tuesday. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. Remind you to take care of yourself and keep vibing. Catch you in the next one. Peace.